And I said, "What's next?" And she said, "You're not ready for what's next." And of course, I'm a Green Beret. What do you mean I'm not ready? Bring it. She knew exactly what she was doing. She'd worked with us before. She said, just put her notebook on. She said, the next step is you have to forgive yourself. And I went, fuck. So I was telling my oldest that on the phone that night. And she said, "Dad, you know you're my hero, right?" Bro, I was the permission I needed. It started crying immediately. And I said, through tears, like, no. We talked a little longer. And when we got off the phone, I just collapsed on that floor and I sobbed. I just ugly cried for a good 15, 20 minutes. And that was a huge breakthrough. That gave me the permission I needed to work on forgiving myself.
Are you focused on growth and personal development? Then we got a show for you today. I'm going to welcome our guest, Tyr Symank. Say hello, Tyr.
Hi. I really thought you were directing that question directly at me. I'm like, man, right out of the gate. Okay.
Wonderful. So you want to introduce yourself to the audience, give a little bit about your background, and we're here about not just motivation, we're talking about transformation on the asset mindset. So please give us your little rundown.
Yeah, I'll have to break it down to an elevator pitch because I think the full intro would probably take half the podcast. My name's Tyr Symank. I'm an almost completely retired Special Forces Sergeant Major with almost 31 years in service. But that is not necessarily how I define myself. I've done a lot of interagency stuff. I've done some civilian stuff and spent most of my adult life in the government service.
So what has been your calling, or where'd you get this drive to serve?
By accident, honestly. I enlisted when I was 19, but I didn't do it out of a specific calling of, there was no selfless service involved. I had a pregnant girlfriend and I was out of college money. So money, ideology, coercion, excitement, they had me at the first one, just money. I was broke and I needed something to do. And the Army provided a means to do that. Now, I've originally enlisted for 2 years. Obviously, I've enlisted a couple times since then. I had some life changes that I married when I was 19 years old, 2 days after my 19th birthday, right before basic, and divorced when I was I forget if I was a corporal or an E5, but one of my best friends from my rugby teammates on the Fort Hood rugby team was going to Special Forces selection. We didn't have any SOF on the base, so I didn't really know what that was all about. But I went to the recruiting through the SF recruiter with him, watched the video, and I thought about it. But again, I didn't really have anything to compare it to other than 1980s movies when GBs were still the soup du jour. And I was afraid that if I didn't go, I was about to get out of the Army altogether and go back and do construction with the rest of the family. And I was afraid that if I didn't do it, I'd always wonder if I would have made it. So that's really why I went. And if I hadn't made it the first time, I don't know that I would have gone a second time. I give a lot of props to teammates I've had over the years that went 2 or 3 times, because I don't think that would have been it for me.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
So you go to selection, and how does this, because you're saying you didn't know much about it, how does selection change your mindset and growth?
I'm not sure that selection changed my mindset and growth. Honestly, there's a couple things that kept me going during the toughest times of selection. One was I ran cross country 1 year in high school. I'm not built like a runner. I've never been built like a runner. But again, I didn't know much about that before I did it. My stepdad just said, "Hey, you're going to do a sport." And I just randomly picked cross country because I figured, even though it was a small school, I figured that everybody on the football team had been playing for years already. And To this day, even though I've played competitive rugby, I still don't know how to throw a football. So I chose cross country. And every race I ran, because it was a small school, I was automatically on the varsity side. So 0 to hero. And every race I ran, I said, "This is it. This is my last race. I'm quitting after this." And but I wasn't going to quit on the team. So I never quit a race, but I always said I was going to quit. In the toughest part of that race, I said, "I'm going to finish this, and that's it." And then I hit the finish line, and you get that endorphin rush, that runner's high, and the rest of your team. It's no longer individual at that point. The rest of your team's there. You're all wheezing and sharing orange slices. So I just never ended up quitting. But I think knowing where that wall was and that I could push through it is what got me through some of the physical trials of SFAS. Because when I went to SFAS, I still wasn't, a stellar runner. I found out I could ruck pretty good, but I wasn't a great runner. The other thing was I had kids at the time, and I pictured my son on the side of the road on those sand roads when you're on an unknown distance timed ruck and things are tough, or an unknown distance timed run. Those spots where I would get discouraged, or somebody's passing me just blowing by me, and it just sucks the will to live right out of you. Like, oh man, that guy's gonna make it. I'm definitely not gonna make it. I would just picture him on the side of the road, and there's no way I was gonna quit in front of him. So the commonality in both of those is it had less to do with me and more to do with other people that are depending on me, and that's really what's kept me going in the worst spots. And honestly, that carries forward 30 years into not 30 years, 25 years into the future. When I was having mental health struggles, I'm still here because of other people depending on me. But that created enough room for me to be able to get the help I needed from me.
So you were able to lean on them as far as they were your why, and still are your why.
That is it. And honestly, anytime I've seen questions on social media about hopefuls wanting to go to selection and need a piece of advice from people that have been there and done that, that's my number one thing. That's a statement that I throw out all the time: is know your why. And I don't know if the kids understand exactly what it is I'm saying by that, but hopefully your listeners do.
Well, dive in that a little more. How would you explain somebody's why?
It's your motivation. It's the reason behind the reason you're doing it. It's one thing to say, "Oh, I watched 12 Strong," or pick any cool guy movie. And this doesn't just apply to being a Green Beret. It could apply to anything difficult. There's that initial recruiting push, whatever it is that got somebody peaked from the get-go. But that's not necessarily what's going to keep you going through the tough times. When you hit that wall, or when you start doubting yourself, you have to know why you're there. And if it's just for a hat or a pin or a resume bullet, whatever it is, some piece of flair that some dude made up a long time ago, you're probably not going to make it. Every soft selection out there is 80% mental and 20% physical. Every one of them.
So how does this mentally make you stronger? Like you're saying, it's 80% mental. What does this do to make the mindset stronger?
Are you talking about the why? But what does that do? That's your foundation. If you break everything else down, all the superficial stuff, all the cool guy accolades, I saw these dudes down range and they had their hands in their pockets, they didn't shave. That's cool, but that's not going to keep you going when you've got a sea bag full of sand and you're carrying it with 4 or 5 other dudes on some poles that are lashed together and keep falling apart, and you're every step you're taking is sinking 6 inches into the sand. That's not that hat and that hands in pockets isn't going to keep you going. You have to have a deeper reason why, and you have to figure that out before you go. And I
I
think
like
that
that.
can be applied to anything. I mean, in my career, that's been soft selection or just staying soft. There's been plenty of tough moments, selection type moments in my career as well. But I think that can be applied to regular civilian life as well, without spending $10,000 on a boot camp for some washed up SEAL to yell at you.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, you don't need to be yelled at to figure it out, but some people are a little slow and they don't realize their why until they're put in those situations. Um, because your mind starts wondering and thinking. And you've talked about some of the mental health stuff. When your mind does wander and it maybe starts going dark, the why can shed light, right?
I don't know if it sheds light, but it does. It's a grounding rod. And I think it's not just for those dark moments when you start questioning if you are worth it. It also applies to everyday decisions. For me, the a lot of the why has been my kids, and I've made some terrible decisions in my career and in my life that have adversely affected my family, and but I've also made some good ones. I turned down a command sergeant major position of a USASOC unit because it would have been a feather in my cap, and it definitely would have kept my career going. But it also would have been 3 back-to-back deployments, and I believe my words to that colonel were, "I really appreciate that I'm your top pick, but if I don't go home soon, my daughter's gonna end up in platform glass heels." I said, "Somebody's got to," and that wasn't a character jab at her. That I was just like, I forget what comedian it was that said it's a dad's job to keep their daughters off the pole. I I don't remember who said that, but that's essentially what I was saying. Like, I got to get home and be a dad at some point, and you know that was a turning point in my career. I never did pin CSM.
Wow.
Yeah,
But it was worth it. And I'm sure you'd make that same decision right now as well.
I would. Yeah, I sure would.
So that decision right there gave you more time with your daughter and your family. Let's talk about the positives that came from that decision.
Man, I've had a very strange. I'm not gonna say strange. I've had a very unique career in that. Well, in several facets, but one in that my transition has been from military to civilian has been long and drawn out. Um, because I chose the National Guard route, I've been able to bounce back and forth between civilian and military life a little bit. For a lot of Guard guys and Guard SF in particular, that means that they're a cop or a firefighter uh, by day and Green Beret by night. For me, I did special operations in and out of uniform, so I never really had that break. I've only got 4 combat hash marks on the right sleeve of my dress uniform, but I have years and years and years downrange. Um, so my first step away from government service at all was in late 2019 when I had come back from a deployment, and the federal government had cut my civilian position because I was gone. Because I was deployed, which is illegal, but it's been my experience that nobody violates federal law better than the federal government. Um, so Evan Hafer, who I served with both in and out of uniform, called me up and asked if I wanted to run some stuff at Black Rifle for him, and that was my first foray into non-government service. And it was nice because I was still working with a bunch of soft guys, mostly. And, they went public and some things changed there, and then I deployed again. So that whole thing was kind of weird, but it was this weird dance in and out of government service. And now, over the last, I'm in the very tail end of a med board right now, from the Army. So I'll probably have my final out in a month. I don't know when you're airing this, but uh, by the time many people watch this, I'll probably be fully civilianized with a horizontal cat card, which I'm looking forward to. But the benefit of that is, uh, a lot of guys, when they retire from military service, it's just an all stop. They've been going all gas, no brakes for 20 plus years. And then they just get kicked out of the vehicle and the car keeps going. We'll use another metaphor. It's their vehicle. It's all gas for 20 plus years. And then all of a sudden just slam on the brakes and all that inertia just hits them. Like, what do I do now? I have that to some point, and honestly, man, I'm struggling with it a little bit, knowing that I'm 30 days out from never officially wearing a uniform again. But if I'm struggling a little bit and I've had this gradual off ramp of military service, I can't imagine what it's like for dudes that this is all they've done. It's man, I feel for them. I really do, because I'm getting just a taste of it. I feel like.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I just got a taste too because I didn't do the full time, full retirement, and I got out early and I went through it. So I can't imagine people 20, 25, 30 plus years and your whole life now, that chapter and that book is closed and
Right.
you're into a new one and you need to rewrite the story. So for you, where do you see your story going next?
The real mission for me in Special Forces, I promoted pretty early. I was never a junior on a team, because I was a medic and they were in high demand. So I went straight from Q course to senior position, and I deployed almost immediately. So I advanced both in skill and experience and rank probably quicker than I should have. I was an E7 team sergeant within, I don't know, 5-6 years. And some of that was, my team sergeant and mentor went off to an SMU and literally handed me the keys to the team room, and just bullied the sergeant major and said, no, he's the team sergeant. So that's how I became a team sergeant early on. But I was when I eventually did make 8, I was only 8 for a couple years before I pinned a star on and pinned 9 on. And some of that was just attrition. The reason I went that route was because I saw how not to do it. And this is, circling back to the point I was trying to make, is that because I became a team sergeant so quickly, my mission in Special Forces has the part that was about me was cut short. It had to be about my team, and then it had to be about my company, task force, whatever it was I was doing. In order for me to be effective at my job, the barometer for that success was, how are my guys doing? How's the mission? If my commander is doing the right thing, is that translating well to the effects for the ODAs or whoever it was I was leading at the time? If my commander is an incompetent ladder climbing asshole, am I insulating them enough so they can get the mission done and he can just go off to, get his piece of flair and move on to the next staff position? That's really what I based what I measured my success off of, through most of, or at least half of my SF career.
So you said insulating. I like that. Let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because obviously insulation is preventing a charge from going out and causing problems or whatever. So this insulation, how do you now convey that? Or maybe convey isn't the right word. How do you utilize that in moving forward?
I don't know. I say that because I'm not exactly 100% sure of what a year from now looks like. I don't foresee any scenario where I will ever again be leading 110 men and women at the tip of the spear. And at the pinnacle, I think for my career, that's where I was at. I was a special forces company sergeant major deployed with not only my organic company assets, but also a plethora of enablers for that specific mission set. And that was a delicate balance, because our company leadership was fine, but the leadership above that, it went straight from us to a trying to remember the word here, a COCOM commander that was extremely incompetent. He's what I call a turtle on a fence post. You ever heard that metaphor?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Turtle on. Let me get closer to light there. Spin it up. I feel like I'm part of an interrogation here. Or go back here. Yeah. So for your listeners, turtle on a fence post. The cowboy is walking along, fixing some fence line, and he comes along and he sees a turtle sitting on top of a fence post. Turtles can't climb, but he's on top of that fence post. Turtle has no idea what he's doing there, but he's there. That is some leaders. They get put on top of a fence post. They couldn't get themselves there. Somebody put them there, and now if they're up, they're just there. So that was that particular flag officer. It hindered things and hurt morale, and already a tenuous situation. I feel like I just went down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, you did a little bit, but with that leadership and that struggle to deal with that, like, how do you insulate? Like, what are the insulation techniques that people, whether it's a boss, whether it's a commander, whether, it's maybe a business partner, another company you're dealing with, to make a sale go through, whatever. What are some insulation techniques that you've found?
Well, first off, so if you have toxic leadership, it's going to create tension and morale issues. And if you have A-type people under you, that's going to increase the tension. If you have non-A types, you may not see the tension, but it's going to create competition, because military people are stuck. There are things that people can do. Like, I've known several people that the reason they went to selection was to escape a terrible command, and that was enough motivation, at least, to put their packet in. But civilian-wise, even with low employment rates, people are not necessarily struck. People have a lot more control over changing their situation. And so if you're running an organization with toxic leadership, purely authoritative leadership style, that works for just a little bit of time before people get worn out and they start looking for exit strategies. So as a sergeant major, sergeant majors have a unique position that I don't know that there's a strong civilian equivalent to that, because a sergeant major whole job is to take care of the troops. Take care of the troops, advise the commander. And so you kind of get to, like, a good sergeant major should be a shit filter first and foremost. And you can do that as a leader in the civilian world, but in both cases, you still have to pass down what it is that leader is trying to do, that the commander's intent, we call them military. And by the way, Daniel, I don't know, like, this is our first conversation, so I don't know your full background, other than in our conversation so far, you said you were in for a little bit. So
I was with 7th Group. I was at 18 Charlie, and a level 3 was 7th Group, and B27 back at Bragg times.
Okay.
I wasn't.
All right. You got shafted.
Yeah, I went there as a contractor working one time, and I'm like, these are your team rooms? I'm like, this is bullshit.
I think there's a reason that nobody in seventh group actually talks about that all that much. I think they get there and they're jumped in and sworn to secrecy of how good it is down there in Florida.
It's incredible when I think about Bragg and what I did, and the team room I had, because I came in right when they started standing the 6 teams back up. So there were no drops in my team room. The 6 team, all our equipment, everything. And as a Charlie trying to find all the stuff because, things come missing. Oh, go to the old 6 team and take whatever. And no, we got all our stuff. We're up on 100%, on the layout. And it was crazy. Good times, but yeah, I mean, it was tough. And now, but I'm glad because guys deserve support. And I think that's what you're talking about too, as a sergeant major. Like, you take care of your workers, your soldiers, the people below you that you're leading. And that creates an environment for them to be successful and do their job.
Yeah, it does. And, on that note, something's been weighing on me the last several months as I prepared to do my final out. I remember when I was a Boy Scout, we used to have to sing the song every night around the fire before we turned in. And one of the lyrics was, have I done or have I dare everything to be prepared? And I keep going back to that. By the way, I was a terrible Boy Scout, but I keep thinking of that line because as I'm about to do my final out, I'm reflecting on my career, and you tend to dwell on your failures more than your successes. I think that's human nature. I think everybody does that. I don't think that's necessarily unless you're a narcissist. I think by and large, most people, that's kind of the human experience. And I've almost it's almost like a 12-step program. Like, I feel compelled to start calling some people that I feel like I failed along the way. And I guess I'm fortunate to only be able to think of a few instances that I really think I could have done better. But a lot of them are in the last few years. And this is the warning part of the message. I've said on several podcasts that you have to put your mask on first. That's the aircraft briefing. If the cabin pressure is compromised in mask drop, you got to put yours on first before you help somebody else. I didn't put my mask on for a very, very long time. And I felt justified in that with, selfless service, taking care of my people. That's my mission. Well, I had purpose. Well, at some point, I really started struggling, and I was blind to it for a little bit. And I blamed, other people or politics or things like that. But the truth is I was really struggling. And when my struggles got to a point, I was no longer really effective as a leader. I couldn't even be a shit filter because it wasn't even passing through me at any point. It came to a point where I was an empty suit. Man, that sun is really kicking in there. So not much we can do about it. We'll just say I'm enlightened with the sun coming through the blinds.
Sounds like you are enlightened. So let's talk about this empty suit a little more. Like, what was that? Because first you had awareness to even notice and be speaking about it now. So what created the awareness, and when did you realize you needed to put your mask on? Or what was that change?
Unfortunately, it took a life-changing event. My wife left while I was deployed. It wasn't the first time that I'd had a divorce. It wasn't. I was already struggling when I went into that deployment. I was asked by name to go on this deployment and be a sergeant major for this specific USASOC organization on combat rotation. I say combat lightly because I I was a sergeant major and I wasn't seeing any combat, but I was in a leadership position over there. And, but I said immediately yes to that deployment because it provided an out. I was already struggling at home, and that deployment was something I knew. It was something that was familiar. I thought I was done deploying. Honestly, I was wrapping up my career, but I had expressed to my spouse that several months prior that I was tired. I was exhausted, and I just wanted to go off into the woods and never come back. And I never said the word suicide, but that's exactly what I meant. You know, I was exhausted. I was tired of feeling the way I was feeling. I was tired of fighting. And so when that deployment came along, that was an escape for me, but it wasn't a fix. It was just another Band-Aid, except they stopped working after a while. And the whole time I was there, I did some good things, but I wasn't nearly as effective as I could have been or should have been. And I think this is just a little epiphanies for me right now too, because I didn't really talk this through. But I think the difference is when I deployed in the past, it was more for other people or for the organization. This deployment was for me. On the flip side of that, I was also a little disenfranchised. I had been in this exact neighborhood in 2007, and now it's 2023. And I just, you play the game long enough, you're like, none of this matters. Like it's kind of how it started feeling. But I was really there to escape more than for the mission or for the match. So that one was for me. And yeah, when I made a plan for where they were going to find my body, I knew I needed to get help. Did that answer your question? I forget what the original question was.
Yeah, it was along that lines, and I don't want to, I like natural and keeping it raw. So you dealt with this, and it was about being the man in the suit, the empty man, and you're struggling in it. But hey, we've all been banged around a little bit, some more than others, and you, I'm sure, have been banged around more than once or twice. So, but you're at this point. You're saying you could, hey, I'm going out in the woods and I'm going to take care of business and not be around and not worry and not feel pain anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then you started thinking about, hey, them finding your body, or how would they? That created a shift. Because obviously you're here, you're talking to me now. Like, so what changed?
I think I told Denny this before, and this is on a couple of the podcasts, but I have no problem sharing this. I think it's important to share. Me executing that plan, the final solution, had very little to do with saving me. That whole taking care of other things kind of kicked in a little bit. So this is the humorous part of this. What is it? SOMTC, Special Operations Mission Training Center.
Yep. The medic course. Yeah.
No, not the medic
Part of
course. So there's a compound at Bragg where it's a bunch of jocks, and you do battle planning. I'd gone there for some pre-mission training prior to this Iraq deployment. And a fake scenario, but realistic. Everything we were doing operational was within the confines of these four walls. And scenarios were being fed via computer screen. All the sections were working. It's a pretty incredible training environment. And if you're a soft leader and you haven't been to this, I'd strongly encourage you to take your team and get there. But we had an admin officer in our J1 position. We took our task force took fake casualties. I want to say fake in there in case this is a soundbite. I don't want people to think, oh man, for real. We took fake casualties. I believe it was 4 of them. Well, the J1 or S1 side of that, they immediately have to start processing casualty paperwork. And I forget everything that goes into that. I knew it pretty well at one point, unfortunately. But this particular officer had to excuse herself at one point, and she was crying in the bathroom. And of course, I didn't say anything. I didn't berate her or look down at her. I just kind of filed that away into like, okay, that's how she reacts to this level of stress inoculation. And these are fake casualties. And there's a lot of dudes in this room that have done this for real. So when the time came where I was going to go off on an Iraqi special forces range, in the far end of it, and off myself, I immediately thought of her breaking down because of fake casualties. And I thought, oh man, she's going to really fuck up this paperwork. She's going to be combat ineffective. She's going to mess up this paperwork, which is going to make a whole mess for my family. It's going to make things harder for the rest of the team. And she's going to struggle with this for the rest of her life. And so that created a little bit of, hesitation there, which led into another thought of, well, at this point I was thinking, I'm a shit ass husband. I'm a shit ass father. That's never going to change. My family would be a lot better off with the SGLI and immediate death benefit that comes to that. And I don't think I'm alone in that thought. I think a lot of guys have thought that, whether they've executed or not. I think that's a pretty common thought. But that thought of my J1 being affected by that the rest of my life, just because she had to do my paperwork, made me think of my kids. And, they're going to get a significant financial payout, but they're also going to end up having to use some of that to pay for therapy for the rest of their lives, because that's the legacy I left them with. And that is really what stopped me from doing it and humble myself and take the hard way instead of the easy way. And man, it was the hard way.
But it was worth it, right?
Still is.
Yeah. So
it still is.
It's good to hear that.
Yeah.
So how have you changed then? What changes have you been able to put into your life to help deal with all this?
There's a lot more humility. Bro, I'm so humble. I'm the humblest guy you're ever going to leave. Nobody's ever going to be more humble than me. There is a certain amount of humility there. There's still self-doubt. There's still imposter syndrome. I still have feelings of, I still struggle with self-worth, but I have more, I've got more tools in the toolbox. When I went to therapy, it's not like I was just going once a week. I left theater and I went to a 5-week inpatient program, followed by 6 weeks of full-time outpatient therapy. That was my job for 4 months. That was my whole job. I mean, for Rangers, that's an entire deployment. So, and it was a controlled environment, inpatient, I know what it is to wear the grippy socks, and I could have left anytime I wanted. I wasn't command mandated to be there. But it was very much a selection mentality for me. I needed to see this through, even on days when I felt like I wasn't getting anything out of it, or it felt very programmatic. I had some real breakthroughs there that still help me to this day. And there were challenges every day as well. I'd have a major breakthrough and then I'd look at my bank account and find out that somebody had charged up $14,000 on a credit card moving back to the East Coast. Or I'd find out that I was being investigated and I didn't know why. That's it's a weird feeling to climb a mountain and be on that peak, and then somebody comes and punches you in the gut or just pushes you off the top of it every day.
So
Yeah, it
you
was
talked about
a struggle.
breakthroughs.
Yeah.
What were the breakthroughs you had so you can share and other people can understand?
Well, there's several, and I'll talk about two specifically. One, it can be a struggle to forgive other people for things. It is that struggle compares not at all. It pales in comparison to trying to forgive yourself, and that was probably the biggest one, honestly. And I couldn't do that without the permission of the people that saved my life in the first place, which is my kids. My kids are adults. I started young. I'm only 27. Okay, I'm 30, 31. But all the time I spent away, that's who I really felt like I failed. That was the big trade-off. Yes, there were spouses in there. They're adults. They can take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
We have a charge as fathers to be fathers. And I had some weird justifications for not being around. One of them was, I was training a Filipino infantry regiment, 141st. I was training them in Mindanao back in 2006. And a lot of people don't know this, but that was part of the GWAT. That was still Operation Enduring Freedom. There was a threat down there. In fact, I lost one of my Robin Sage graders, Mark Jackson, in the Philippines. But a lot of my Filipino troops, they would go months without seeing their families. They were deployed to the southern archipelago to fight Abu Sayyaf or MNLF or MILF, NLP, whoever it was. And they wouldn't see their families forever. And so I had it back in my head, I'm like, we as Americans, we don't know how good we have it. It's okay for me to be gone for months at a time because I'm serving this mission and I'm sending this money home, and that's my job as a provider and protector. I'm protecting everyone, and I'm providing money for my family. There is no replacement for your time away. And it took SOCOM a long time to figure that out. They're still not really doing it well, but I'll just say that again. There's no replacement for your time away. I'm catching up a lot with my kids now, and I'm realizing there's a lot about my career that I assumed they knew because of podcasts and reading between the lines, things I don't say on podcasts, people I'm associated with, things I don't talk about because I'm not supposed to. But if you're in the community, it's fairly obvious. If you know what I'm not saying, and telling, like just last week, I just started talking about something randomly. We were all out at pizza here locally, and I was saying something about a specific experience, and they just kind of all stopped with pizza at their mouth, like kind of looking at me like, what? Like, oh, you didn't know that? Oh, yeah. And they're like, when did all this happen? I'm like, okay, so you remember that Christmas where it wasn't actually Christmas? We did Thanksgiving at Grandma and Grandpa's, and then I left. We did celebrate Christmas the next day, and then I left. Like, yeah. Like, well, there's a reason I wasn't home for Christmas. That's why we celebrated Christmas right then. And, there's stuff I'm not saying right there, but that was the actual conversation. And, holy crap, dude. I just went down a huge rabbit hole.
Yeah, you did. And it's good though, because this is getting back to the breakthroughs, like spending the time with your family.
Yes. So
that's a breakthrough.
That breakthrough, needing my kids' permission. I was talking to my oldest, my daughter was talking to her. Our phones are locked up when we're inpatient. We can have it out during lunch and for a couple hours at night and, first thing in the morning. But other than that, they're locked up. I was talking to her from my room about my individual therapy session that day, in which my therapist said, basically, she said, "You've reached this spot." And I said, "What's next?" And she said, "You're not ready for what's next." And of course, I'm a Green Beret.
Yeah,
What do
yeah,
you mean I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
ready? What do you mean I'm not ready? Bring it. She knew exactly what she was doing. She'd worked with us before. She said,
I love it.
you just put her notebook down. She said, you have the next step is you have to forgive yourself. And I went, fuck. So
Oh,
I was telling my oldest that on the phone that night. And she said, "Dad, you know, you're my hero, right?"
I'm sure you went into that next session.
Bro, that was the permission I needed. I started crying immediately, and I just said, through tears, like, "No." And, we talked a little longer. And when we got off the phone, I just collapsed on that floor. Uh, very thin concrete very, very thin carpet on that concrete, or the tile, whatever it is. I just remember that the floor was really hard, but I, I just collapsed on that floor and I sobbed. I just ugly cried for a good 15, 20 minutes. And that was a huge breakthrough. That gave me the permission I needed to work on forgiving myself. It wasn't a one and done process. It's not like you just, oh, you're good. I have to live with myself every day. Nobody else does. I have to do that. Anybody that struggles, everybody struggles. That's the biggest thing. We have to face ourselves in the mirror every day. Every day. We can take all the mirrors out of our house. We still have to deal with ourselves every day. So forgiving myself, it's an ongoing process, because I'm also not done fucking up. So
Well, you're still alive and nobody's perfect. As far as I know, there's only been one perfect man who actually wasn't a man or just a man.
rolling rocks and whatnot. Yeah, Jesus went to selection. There's no way he could have pushed that rock out of the way without doing that. There's probably some lashings involved. Yeah, so that's an ongoing process, and having a little bit of grace for myself is the ongoing part of that. And also that's the ongoing struggle. But the other big breakthrough I had in that therapy was finding, I was a medic. Things are scientific to me. Things follow a logical algorithm. And other than just being a monster, which is what my ex-wife called me, that was her last words to me, was, "You're a monster." I accepted that. I accepted that I was a monster, but there was also a lot of good that I'd done. And I was having trouble coming to an understanding of how I could be this asset to everybody, this good dude, my kids actually loving me, but this monster. And I thought, there's got to be some kind of science behind this. And there is. And my therapist did a therapy technique called, I think it's called family systems. I don't know. You have to get Jamie to fact check that one. It's something along those lines. But that particular modality of therapy cracked me open in a way that I'd never been cracked open before. And what I found out through that is that there is a surprisingly high percentage of people in protective roles, people that get into special operations and special forces, specifically, that were left in a position when they were young where they could not protect themselves, and somebody and whoever was charged with protecting them failed to protect them. For me, that was sexual abuse. For others, it's physical abuse, neglect, whatever. But there are a lot of us that get into this line of work subconsciously to be protectors, to be the protectors that we didn't have. And that was something I learned. I flip back to the beginning of this podcast where I said I didn't get in to SOF for noble reasons, or the Army for noble reasons. I may not have enlisted for that, but I stayed, and that's why I stayed. And there were a lot of off ramps along the way that I didn't take, and I didn't know that part of me was assuming this protector role because I needed to protect the 6-year-old in me that was left unprotected, that was hurt. And there's a lot of dudes out there that don't know that, because I completely discounted my sexual abuse. Like, I brushed over it. Like, it came up briefly in therapy. She's like, whoa, come back to it. I'm like,
yeah, that's behind. That's old.
That happens to a lot of people. It hasn't really affected me. Like, I don't think about it. And she's like, yeah, crack me open, man.
Yeah, that might have shaped, the path you went on in the future. Hello?
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
So, man, I got to say, dear, I'm so proud of you for sharing and opening up, and some with your background and the things you've been through, and a hard man. And I know there's a stigma out there that we face at times because we are supposed to be the protector, the solid, and have it all together. And for you to come out and share, that's bravery and courage, and you have that. And thank you for doing it. Thank you for being on the show. And I want you to talk to now, before we go, to the audience, as far as someone else that's out there, no matter where they are, military, not, first responder, civilian, when they're struggling, how it can be better on the other side. Because obviously you were at the darkest place and you're like, hey, this sucks, and I'm going to, just end it.
So what's the question? What do you want me to?
What would you share? Like, what message do you want to leave listeners that somebody that could be in your shoes that's struggling, no matter who they are, across the board?
There's an organization I work with. Yeah, there's an organization I work with called Boot Campaign. Now, one thing I like about them is they are not SOF specific. You and I, Denny, we have bottomless resources because we went to selection, because we served in Special Forces Regiment. Not all conventional forces have that. There are 40,000 veteran service organizations out there, and most of them prefer to serve SOF. And there's reasons for that. We don't really need to get into that, but Boot Campaign's motto is "You Matter," and that's the shirt I should have worn. It just says "You Matter" on it, but I would expand on that and say, you're worth it. I think a lot of people shun taking in the helping hand because they don't think it's for them. It's the same reason that guys don't file their disability claims or anything else that they're actually entitled to. Somebody else needs this more than I do, and I don't want to take up resources. I've said that. I still say that. Boot Campaign has been bugging me to actually enroll in one of their programs. I've been referring people to them, and their executive director has essentially taken tough love with me, and she hasn't said it, but I know she's doing it. She is basically shunning any further support I give them until I actually go through their program. Honestly, that's a phone call I have to make as soon as we wrap up recording. But the reason I haven't is because I know resources are limited, and I don't want to take up somebody else's slot. That is shit ass thinking. It feels good. It goes right in line with
excuse.
That. It goes right in line with Leaders Eat Last and selfless service and everything else. Those are good things. They're not bullshit, but you have to put your mask on first. And if you're not willing to take those programs and say, I am worth it, then find the flip side of that. Look at your kids, look at your wife, look at the people that you come into contact with every day. Are you serving them by not going and getting help? No, you're doing them a disservice. So take that hand. The programs are out there. They're fully funded. There's no excuse for not getting help. Even the common, I can't get help because I have a security clearance. Both All Secure Foundation and the Special Forces Trust have anonymous programs. And I've used All Secure. I still call that therapist every once in a while. They're designed for people like us that are still except they're still in the fight and they still need a clearance to go and they don't want that stigma. It's completely anonymous. The command has no knowledge of it whatsoever. And they do a very good job of that. So that there's every excuse that somebody has, I've said all of them. Every excuse that somebody has for not getting help, there's a counter to that. There is no reason not to get help. When I first met Tom and Jen Satterley, it had nothing to do with me getting help. I met them in Southern Pines. We were grabbing a pint. I was about to deploy, but I was still working for Black Rifle, and I was a charitable giving manager. So I had the checkbook for cutting checks to nonprofits. And I met them and I cut them a check for $10,000 to sponsor a Camp Homefront event. And the normal response from nonprofits when you cut a check like that is just gushing, just nothing but gratitude. Tom's response was, when are you going to get help? And I said, brother, I'm good for right now. And I literally said, I'm going on this deployment. I've got a mission right now. Maybe when I get back, but I've got a mission right now. So I'm good. And I couldn't, that was not masking. That was very in line with my thought process at the time. I was using that deployment, just like I said, as a filler for actual therapy. That's not a filler. We do these red cycle taskings and, all this stuff that has to be done between deployments. I don't think anybody really thinks about getting right in the head as one of those red cycle taskings, but it absolutely should be. It absolutely should be. This is my soapbox on this. Other than everybody needs and deserves therapy, this is my soapbox. The only way for that stigma to change within our community is for leaders to start using the services, because humans more important than hardware is just a cliche until that happens. When leaders go off to JSOW or USASMA or command and staff or any of these things that take them, off the line for a little bit, I really feel that it should be mandatory that they receive X amount of counseling sessions when they go. One, it's going to be good for them. And because it's command mandated, they don't have to say, oh, I went to therapy because because I suck, but also, how do you know what it is that the people you're responsible for leading are going through if you haven't had a taste of it yourself? You don't.
Yeah. No.
It just goes back to soft truths and cliches. And everything in, as far as unconventional as we are, we're pretty conventional. 2-year command tours, check this block to get to this next stage. It's pretty regimented. So there's no reason that can't be worked in. I dropped my paperclip. That's my soapbox.
There you go. No, great. Hey, go in the description and follow Tyr and what he's doing. And he's an amazing person. He's got a lot of good videos, a lot of good information out there. Do us a solid, be positive, spread goodness, spread love, spread awareness, realize you're not alone. And if you need help, hey, reach out to me. I help coach, mentor people, get their mindset right where they can grow and evolve and develop and transform into someone that owns their power and takes responsibility of their life. So I'm going to say it again. Own your power.
Own it. Let me do a couple shout outs real quick before you hit that cut button. Did you already cut?
I didn't. So Denny's there in the background.
All right.
Go.
Okay. So, mental health side, I'm part of 2 organizations that are a lot of fun, but will lead to better things. First, Real Warriors. They're all over the country, but the headquarters in just out of San Antonio, Texas. Look them up. REEL. It's a fishing and hunting nonprofit, but it leads to better things. And then the second, I'm with Montana Veterans Program out of Great Falls, Montana. If you are looking for a physical challenge, you need to get outside and really get a gut check and don't want to be yelled at by a former SEAL for $10,000. That's the route to go. All veterans are eligible for both of the programs these guys throw out. And again, boot campaign, any veteran is eligible. All Secure Foundation, All SOF, Special Forces Trust is Green Berets. And if you fall somewhere in between all those, look up Special Operations Care Fund, SOCF. That's what I got.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. And brother, proud of you for being the man you are.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.